everybody. My name is Carlos Bello. I am from the Ambulatory Pain Management Service, and today we will be talking about diet and chronic pain. And we have our speaker, Deanna Troiano.
Hi everyone, my name's Deanna. I'm a dietitian working with the community rehab program at the Anglers Hospital. Today we're going to be talking about food, but in particular food and chronic pain, because there is a link between what we eat and pain. So we'll be having a chat through that today. So there's two types of eating. There's eating when we're hungry, and they're our obvious signs of hunger, things like a grumbly stomach, feeling a bit lightheaded, getting just those obvious signs of hunger that we would be aware of. And then there's non-hungry eating, and that's about eating when we might not necessarily be hungry. Maybe we're eating because we're stressed, we're bored, maybe because there's just food available and we're home more often. And that's quite normal. Not everyone eats just because you're hungry. So many people, it's everyone does it at certain points of their life, or to eat when they're not necessarily hungry. And sometimes people might eat really fast and might not realize that they're filling up really quickly, or might not be enjoying a meal as much. So I guess this slide's really just a bit of an overview to kind of get us into the presentation, to let you know that there's eating because you are hungry, and then eating because you may not be hungry, but there are other reasons that might be driving you to eat. So in the last 24 hours, there's so many reasons that people experience hunger. Habit is a really big one. Maybe every night, 6 o'clock, you sit down and have something to eat because you're into that routine. Social, might be going out and eating with family or friends. Comfort is a really big one. So maybe when you're in pain or when you're feeling a bit sad or stressed, you can comfort eat. Boredom is a really big one too. And if you're at home, sometimes you're looking for things to do, and it's just so easy to go grab something from the pantry or from the fridge. If you're in pain, that can help. Some people find that eating can help to soothe them, and it can always be as a bit of a comfort as well. Stress can be another reason why people eat. There's also some other triggers. When you walk past a bakery, you might notice the smell of fresh bread, or when you go to the movies, there's always that association. You might grab some popcorn when you're sitting in the movie theater. Procrastinating, sometimes you may not want to do your homework or housework or something like that, and eating is a bit more exciting. Then there is, some people do, secretive eating, and there can be some guilt associated with that as well. And some people eat for pain, or loneliness. Sometimes it makes you feel good when there's nothing else that may not be going right at the moment. Life's feeling out of control. But what people sometimes find they can control is what they eat and what sort of foods they've got in the house. So and none of these things are wrong. I think it's really important that that's stressed. At various times in people's lives, we do eat other than because we are generally hungry, and these things are okay, because we're all human and no one's perfect, and it is okay that if you do eat for reasons other than being hungry. So sometimes when we do overeat for a long time, we can actually forget what it feels like to be physically hungry. So looking for those signs of that, that gurgling in the stomach, that empty feelings, sometimes over time we can forget what that feels like. And there is a difference in knowing when you're hungry and not hungry, and it's really helpful to be able to check in on your hunger scores. So at the bottom, there's a scale. So Christmas Day being full, like absolutely full. You can't move. You know, maybe you need to have a bit of a nap as well. That would be what, you know, a 10 out of 10. And then we've got 0, which is absolutely empty. And generally, if you're at this point, you're not feeling very well at all. You know, chances are you're feeling really lightheaded. You might not be able to concentrate or think very clearly. So I guess it's, you know, at any point in time, people's hunger can rate from 0 to 10. And I think it's, you know, a really good exercise to be able to identify where you might be feeling at any point in time. We're kind of aiming between about 4 and 6, which is that comfortable feeling after we're eating, because we don't want, if you're feeling so uncomfortable, that doesn't feel good either. So you're kind of aiming somewhere in the middle. And you might find that when you are really hungry as well, that you might go for quick and easy options. And these foods might be higher in fat, higher in energy, higher in sugar as well. So they may not necessarily be the most healthy options either if you wait till you get to that point where you're absolutely ravenous. So if you eat regularly during the day, that's going to stop you from getting too hungry, and then overeat a bit later in the day, or choose foods that you may not be as good for us because maybe you're finding it hard to grab something when you're out and about or something like that. So pain has lots of impacts on eating and behavior. It might affect your ability to get to the shops. Maybe you can't walk very far, it's hard to carry the shopping bags, can't get on the public transport or get up onto the bus or the tram, and they can all be really big barriers that can affect eating. Fatigue is a really big one. You know, energy levels can, you know, if you have to stand for a long time to prepare food, that can be quite challenging. And it can also be quite exhausting as well. If you're on a limited budget, it can also be a bit difficult. And if you're on any medications, and they can make it a bit more difficult as well. If you're finding that you've got, you know, maybe you're finding that your pain's getting a bit worse, or you're getting some other side effects from it. So it has so many different impacts on eating and what we choose and what we're able to get as well, because if you're having to rely on public transport as an example for your food, then that can be a barrier. So eating awareness is about tuning into your hunger and fullness cues, but it's also about just sitting, also just being a bit aware and in the moment of what you're eating. And a good exercise, you might be able to do this at home, is, you know, when you've got something in your mouth, you can pick anything really, but it's just about eating the food quite, you know, slowly, noticing the smell, the textures, take a bite. What do you notice about that? You know, for example, a sultana might be a good one. You might notice that there's the ridges on the outside of the sultana, but when you take a bite, maybe you're noticing that softness inside it. It's just, and you might notice that different parts of the sultana might be a bit sweeter. So it's just about just taking a moment to use all of your senses to eat more slowly and just to enjoy it. And one really powerful thing about this exercise is if you able just to stop for a moment, you'll find that you'll feel satisfied with eating a smaller amount of food, especially if you might be someone who might eat for comfort, as an example, or you might be someone who just eats when you're watching TV, and then you might not realize how much you're eating. Like, you know, I do that as well. You might be sitting down watching a good movie on Netflix, and all of a sudden you've eaten a whole pack of chips, which is so easy to do. But with eating with awareness, it's about, you know, maybe you feel satisfied with just, you know, a handful, because you're able to really enjoy it. So healthy food behaviours that we recommend would be eating regularly. And that's to stop people from getting too hungry that then they might overeat. But it's also good at just making sure that people are able to get enough nutrition during the day. So eating when you're hungry, eating until you're in that midpoint. So not overly not over full and uncomfortable, but eating until you're satisfied. Eating a variety of foods, and you can have those sometimes foods, and we don't want people to have guilt around it, or these negative emotions about food, because food is food. And the media are really good at calling things like cakes and chocolate as these bad foods that we shouldn't be eating, but at the end of the day, it's food. And if you do want to eat it, that's fine. We just recommend small amounts of it. And if you're able, and you might find that if you're able to do that mindful activity in the slide before that, you might be able to actually enjoy it a lot more when you're able to, get all the senses involved. We recommend to not skip meals as well, and we want people just to enjoy all foods in moderation, and that's where we want to remove the guilt around foods. So this is our Australian guide to healthy eating. Some of you may have seen the old food pyramid. This is a new version of it, and you will see that there's different little sections in the circle. So we encourage people to eat different, eat some foods from each of the different sections, because they give us lots of vitamins and minerals. So we've got the yellow section, which is our grain foods, really good for energy, really good for our bowels. Then we've got the green section, so we've got the fruit and the vegetables, really high in fiber, lots of vitamins and minerals. And we encourage people to eat different colours, because different colours have different vitamins and minerals. Then we've got the dairy section next to the fruit, which is that purpley sort of colour. And our dairy foods are a good source of protein, so really good for muscles, but really good at helping for people who, really good for satiety and making people feel a bit hungry and maybe making them last a bit longer to the next meal. It's really good for hunger and really good for our bones and keeping our bones nice and strong. And then we've got our meat products, our protein foods. So our meats, legumes, chickpeas, eggs, red meat, those sorts of things. Really good for muscle, really good as well if you find that you get quite hungry between your main meals. They can help to bulk up your meals and help with your hunger. And then at the bottom, we've got the sometimes foods, and we recommend them in small amounts. So things like lollies and cakes, chips, those sorts of things. Again, we don't want you to have any guilt if you do eat them. It's just in moderation is what we encourage people. And then just something on omega-3. So omega-3 fatty acids are really good with inflammation. So by reducing inflammation in the body, it can help with pain. And that can help with, maybe not needing as much medication. So the omega-3 are really, really important for pain management. So it can take up to 3 months for it to have an impact. So you're not going to notice anything straight away, but really good sources would be fish, especially salmon. That's a really good source of the omega-3, like your fatty fishes. Walnuts, soy products, canola oil, eggs, cheese seeds and linseeds, but so a lot of our other nuts and seeds as well are really good. Also things like avocado too are really good sources of omega-3 fats. And then we've got at the bottom, you can see something about the saturated and trans fats, and these foods are pro-inflammatory. So that means they increase inflammation, they increase pain in the body. So there are a lot of our, when we're talking before about the sometimes foods, So you'll find a lot of those sometimes foods like the sausages, the cakes, the chips, the chocolate, they're actually quite high in saturated fat, which is a bad fat. And these foods can actually increase inflammation and increase pain. So we do recommend just small amounts and just on occasions with those foods, and hopefully that will help with the pain that you might be getting. In terms of fish oil supplements, you can have them if you want. And that's if you don't if you don't eat any of the foods in the picture, so like your oily fish, your nuts, your seeds, your canola oil. If you're not eating any of those, then fish oil supplements are definitely an option for you. But if you are eating a lot of those foods, then there may not necessarily be a need for the fish oil. But if you did want to have a chat, you can always talk with your pharmacist or the dietitian if you wanted to know whether that would be right for you. Then we've got the pre and probiotic foods. And these foods are really good for our gut, and these are foods that give our gut food and our bacteria in our gut food, and it can help with breakdown of what we eat, but it also plays a role in depression and anxiety, and even how we feel as well, and pain. So there's a lot of research going into this area, and we definitely don't know everything yet. But what we are starting to realize that that we've got these prebiotic foods. So they're things like our fermented foods, things like yogurt, kimchi, and these foods are really good at really good bacteria for our body. And then we've got our prebiotic foods. So things like onions, leeks, bananas, and they're really good just in expanding the role of our good bacteria. And so it's not very easy sometimes to get our probiotic foods. If you don't like yogurt and you don't like fermented foods, you may not actually be getting a lot of these, but you could be another option as an example to get them. So we encourage people to eat a rainbow of food, a variety of foods. It's going to help just to make sure you're getting a lot of vitamins and minerals, but it's also going to help in making sure you're getting a good amount of omega-3 fatty acids and pre and probiotic foods as well. So we've got the energy balance, and what we're kind of aiming for is the energy in and the energy out to be the same. So I guess imagine a seesaw. So if there's only one person on it, it's going to just go one way. If you've got two people, probably stay in the middle. And that's what we're aiming for. So we've got our energy in is what we're eating and drinking. And energy out would be our metabolism and physical activity as well. And then that can play a big role with our weight. So a big role in our weight is being able to control what we put in and not consuming too many calories. So we've got some foods that are really good at sustaining our energy and keeping us able to feel like we've got enough energy to do our activities for a longer period of time. So foods that are lower in GI, you might have heard GI, if you know of anyone who might have diabetes, that's probably the biggest space that we might talk about GI or glycemic index. And what foods that are low GI means it doesn't break down as quickly in the body. It does like a small drip of release of energy and into the body. So that means for us as humans, we're going to have more energy, a sustained amount of energy for a longer period of time. Foods that are high GI will tend to give us this big sugar high, and then we tend to crash later in the day. So if you are having, you are finding it challenging with your energy levels, I would definitely encourage to go for the lower GI foods. So things like multigrain bread, porridge, fresh fruit are really good sources of low GI foods. Higher GI foods will be more your refined products, or things that are quite high in sugar. So refined products might be white bread instead of a multigrain bread. It might be cornflakes or rice bubbles compared to wheat bix or porridge. So they're just some examples of, you know, what just making some small changes can have to your energy levels. Also, if you include some high fiber options, they're going to help with fill up your stomach. So that means you may not get hungry as much in between main meals. It might mean that you may not need to eat as such a large meal for your next meal of the day. But that might mean you might be reducing your overall calorie intake as well. And that might help if you are concerned about your weight. We encourage people to use lots of non-starchy vegetables. So that would be things like your broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, asparagus, those sorts of things. And making sure that would be half of your plate. And looking for the lower energy or calorie option when you're looking at food labels as well. So if you want to, you still can have your starchy vegetables like your potatoes as an example, but we would tend to recommend that more half your meal would be from your non-starchy foods. So just a bit of a guide about how food has changed over the years, and a lot of these things, some of them have been really gradual that we don't even realize. So we've got, you know, a cookie, and how much bigger a cookie was 20 years ago to now. You know, that big one is, you know, those really monster size large cookies. Even a muffin, they're so big now compared to what they used to be. Pizza slices are bigger. When we go to a restaurant, what used to be a entree size is very different now, or a main size is very different. And you can see how many extra calories by these larger portions have as well. Even our dinner plates have expanded too. So, and it's quite common that people want to fill up the plate, and if it's not full, they feel like they're not getting enough food. But there's so many tricks that have, you know, things have changed over time. So if you're not hungry, you don't have to fill up your plate if you don't need to. And I guess something just to remember, that food is neutral morally. You know, we don't want to call food good, bad, anything like that. Just a bit of an example, you know, we've got a couple of different breakfast options, and just the calorie difference. So we've got a smoothie bowl, which would be considered a good, healthy breakfast. But as you can see, it's almost double the amount of calories compared to the fry-up. Even got more sugar as well. So I guess just something to highlight is that if, you know, that we don't want people to be put off certain foods. And, you know, if you do feel like something, you can have it. Then we've got, again, the salad option or the junk option. You know, everyone thinks that the salad is the better one. But if you look at it again, the burger actually is less in calories. And the reason would be that this salad here would have a lot of cream in it that would make the burger be a better option. Doesn't mean that we'd be advocating people to eat burgers all the time over salads, but just something to be aware of, that just because it's a salad doesn't mean it's healthy. A lot of the calories from salads come from the dressings, and that can be a big determinant whether that can be a healthy option or an unhealthy option. We were comparing the Big Mac salad or garden salad. That would be a very big difference. We would, you know, I think in this situation, it'd be a lot more easier to be able to pick out which would be the more unhealthier option. Then we've got comparing nuts to the Kit Kat. Again, very similar in calorie intake, but I think people would generally think that the Kit Kat would be the worst option. One key thing I will make note of with nuts is people tend to overeat nuts and dried fruit because they are so small, and they're not very filling. You actually need to eat a lot of them to fill you up. And a lot of the dried fruit and nuts can be quite high in calories and sugar. Yes, they're natural and they're good for us, but I think portion is a really important thing to be aware of in this example, that too much of anything, even if it's good, doesn't mean it's good for us. Then we've got another breakfast option. We've got our smashed avo, and then we've got bacon again. The smashed avo, higher again in calories. So I guess, just something to be aware of. Just go for what you enjoy. I think is a key thing. But I guess if you are trying to go for the healthier options, and you might be looking here and going, oh, but I thought I was eating healthy, but it's actually quite lot higher in calories than what I was thinking. I don't want you to feel put off, but it's just more something to be aware of. And the big thing here is the portions. Too much of anything isn't necessarily good. So for example, in this one, avocado is a really healthy option, but we would recommend 1/4 of an avocado a day, while when you would go out to a restaurant, they might be giving you half or even more of an avocado, and that's where the calories are. So just some practical eating tips. It's always good just to have some healthy food available, either in your car or in the pantry, just so if you are feeling hungry, you can grab those healthy options instead of grabbing for something that might be higher in fat or sugar. Choosing fruits and vegetables that are in season and getting things that are on special can be a bit cheaper. Being aware of when you might be eating because you're not necessarily hungry, this non-hungry eating. If you want to do some, tuning and do that mindful activity where you tune into your senses, if that helps, by all means, you can do that. Buy in bulk when you're feeling better. You might find that when you are feeling better, you could do a big cook for the week and freeze it. If you find that would be, helpful for you, or if you notice there's a certain time of day that you're feeling better, make use of those opportunities to do your shopping or your meal preparation and cooking. Plan your meals for the week. Write down a shopping list. It can be so easy when you don't have a list to get some sneaky things in there. So a list is always really helpful. And if you can't get out and about, there's always online shopping and home delivery. So don't feel afraid to use those options, or there's even click and collect now, which is becoming a lot bigger. So don't feel like getting out and visiting the supermarket in person is the only option, because there's a lot of other avenues available if pain is a barrier or an issue for you that makes it really challenging. Well, thank you so much for listening to the presentation today. I hope you had some good tips and some good information that you'll find very helpful.
Deanna, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I know that you've done this presentation in front of our pain management program before, and I have a question about questions. What were the questions, if you can remember, what were the questions that the pain management program participants posed to you that they had questions for about diet? Do you remember? If not,
it was a bit about fad diets by memory.
Mm-hmm.
That was one thing that they had some questions about. I think a bit more about the omega-3 fatty acids too. And there was a lot of discussion about managing energy levels and fatigue and cooking and that sort of thing. It started off with the question, but then it ended up being a really big group discussion along the way, and then other questions came.
Gotcha. Do you have any advice about those kinds of questions?
Sorry?
Do you have any specific advice about those kind of questions?
Yeah, I think with fatigue, it's about, if there is anyone available that can help, or maximizing times when you're feeling better. I think making use of those opportunities. And if they are a bit, if they need to be on NDIS or My Aged Care, there's some council services available to them. So if they can't do it themselves, they can get people to come into the home and do some meal prep for them, or to do shopping for them, or if they want to go out, they can go out together with them. So there are some services out there, depending on people's needs. So I don't think people should feel like they're stuck alone. There's nothing out there, because there are things out there if people do need them.
Yeah. I really like what you said early on in the presentation, where that there's just things that are habitual that we don't question. And as an example of myself, I think when I'm really stressed, I'm really busy in my life, I'll go for drive through Macca's or drive through KFC. And what I tend to do is I don't do any mindfulness at all inside of that. I just sort of scoff it down. And I think that probably my household never sat down. Growing up, my household never sat down and had a meal and talked about it. It was sort of something to just do. So we tended to just eat and just scoff things down, and then that's it, and then go about our day. So it's really I think that having the conversation of what are your eating habits, and do you spend the time to actually experience eating? I think that's a really good point. So thanks for mentioning that.
Oh, that's okay.
A question about calorie counting and that sort of stuff, like resources for it. What's the expectation of like the number of calories that we're supposed to have? It was good that you sort of said that the pizzas used to be this big, now they're this big, and the avocado versus bacon and eggs, like the calorie differences. Any sort of resources, and then actually like the expectation on the number of calories that we're supposed to have?
It's all really individual, because it's based on activity levels, gender, and weight. But the general guide is about 8,000 kilojoules a day. Some people need a bit more, some people need a bit less than that. If people want to learn a bit more about calorie counting, they can always chat with a dietitian. But there's some really good apps out there, like MyFitnessPal, can work it out for you, how many calories for the day that you need. They just ask you some questions about your height, your weight, your age, those sorts of things. Tell you how many calories you'll be aiming for, and then you can put in the app like what you're eating for the day. So for some people it's really helpful, but other people don't want to get caught up on the numbers. It can be really overwhelming, and so it works for some but doesn't work for others.
Gotcha. So you said earlier before that that you could get referred to a dietitian. I'm just wondering about that. Like, when would you say that someone should speak to a dietitian? Yeah, and where would you go for resources to get in touch with a dietitian?
So I would say if it's just a one-off question, it might just be they can have a chat afterwards, or if you could you send an email to me and I can give them a call or something like that. But if they've got lots of questions, if they've got maybe concerns, they want to lose weight, or they've got diabetes and they're trying to manage lots of different things, and I think an appointment with a dietitian would be better, because they can sit down and really just nut out everything. And in that situation, there's actually community health dietitians here at the Angus. So if you did need any help, I'm happy to help you with the referral form, or there's even each community health. So there are some local ones, but I'm kind of happy to, show, point you in the right direction if there was anyone who did want to talk to someone and, more tailored.
Yeah,
something like that.
Thank you. I was just thinking, so you were talking about like, this is the last question. You're talking about like prebiotics and like probiotics and that sort of stuff. And then I'm also thinking about like IBS, and I'm just thinking, what would be your cue for somebody who should focus a little bit on improving their prebiotics probiotics sort of regime? What kind of symptoms would they have? And then, care to make any comments about IBS? Because I think that in the chronic pain cohort, there's a lot of people with IBS.
Yeah. So a lot of people, when they have IBS, tend to be on a low FODMAP diet, which is a diet which helps to find out if people have food intolerances. But what happens quite often is people tend to feel really good on this diet, and then they never transition back into introducing foods that they may actually be able to have. And what that means is inadvertently their diet is lower in these pre and probiotics, because the low FODMAP diet is really restrictive. For 6 weeks, 4 weeks, it's okay. But if you're on it months and years, it can actually have a big impact on your gut bacteria. So then when you do eat something that's outside of this diet, you might find that it aggravates you even more and you get more severe symptoms. So I guess what in terms of IBS, I think it's about trying to maybe find out what might be causing the IBS and trying to work through the treatment and the investigation quickly instead of just doing part of it, because I think there'll be better results from that by increasing the food variety. That can help with pain, but also can help with symptom management and just overall improving their IBS in the longer term, because if you cut foods out, it's just so much harder to then reintroduce them further down the track. So I think it's about finding the cause and just finishing the course of the treatment would be my advice with that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming along and recording this and providing such a great talk. I think that there was a lot for me to get. Certainly I need to slow down my eating, but also like really look at, my portion sizes as well. Beautiful. Okie dokes. Thank you.
That's all right. No worries.